You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Welcome to the John Ford UFO Nightmare, a dedicated ufologist's journey through hell and our attempt to get him out.
Welcome to the John Ford UFO Nightmare, episode 26. I believe we have some exciting news to talk about tonight on the air. We have our full brain trust of researchers on tonight. I'm not going to go through introductions. Everybody knows who's on tonight if you've been a regular listener to the John Ford UFO Nightmare. And I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Bob Tarmac to take it over, and we're going to get into some really, really good, I would say good news finally with the John Ford UFO Nightmare. Take it away, Mr. Tarmac.
Well, it's about time we have some good news. Anyways, if you're listening to this show for the very first time, this is about John Ford. It's about a fellow who was doing UFO research and got too close to information that he was not supposed to know about. What eventually happened is he was railroaded, he was framed, and he's been incarcerated for the last 20 years. I'm rather new to this. I've only had maybe a year to 2 years worth of exposure to it. We do have some good news. There has been a development with the John Ford case. Also, I didn't mention, he hasn't just been incarcerated in a jail. They took a man who was completely innocent, never convicted of any crime whatsoever. He was a court officer with the New York State Supreme Court, and so very well-trusted individual. They locked him away in an institute for the criminally insane, the worst possible place that you could put somebody, and they're not going to let him out. So this is why we have this show. It's to keep this travesty in the public eye, and hopefully as we have the show aired week after week, month after month, the public will say this is an outrage and needs to end. In any case, I'm going to hand this over to Marilyn. Marilyn, you have some good news for us regarding John Ford?
I do. I'm really excited about this. I did talk to Joe the other day, and he gave me this information. And he has a new lawyer to the tune of $25,000, but it's a flat fee that he'll do it for $25,000, including court fees. His name is Steve Metcalf from Metcalf and Metcalf PC. You want me to give the address of where he's located?
I want to.
It's 11 Broadway, Suite 615, New York, New York, 10004. And Dick and I spent the better part of 2 hours the other day, and we copied and stapled every letter that John had ever written to Elaine Douglas. And she had saved every one of those letters. And so some of them are like love letters. Some just are general information of what's going on with John. But in our opinion, we think that those letters indicate what frame of mind John was in when he was arrested. They were dating when he was arrested. So they had a relationship. Later on, Elaine kind of gave up on the relationship and then moved to Moab, Utah. But I'd like to read you the cover letter that we put with all those letters. We figured that he'd get these letters and say, what the heck is this, So here's my letter. Metcalf and Metcalf PC, 11 Broadway, Suite 615, New York, New York, 10004. Reference John Ford case, Mid-Hudson Psychiatric Hospital, New Hampton, New York. Dear Mr. Steve Metcalf, you are receiving these personal letters written by John Ford over a period of years to Miss Elaine Douglas of Moab, Utah. John and Elaine were in a relationship at the time of his arrest. Elaine passed away 2 years ago in January 2015. It is our opinion that these letters will show the state of mind John had at the time of his arrest until 2007, when the letters stopped coming. Elaine stopped writing him due to a serious illness, and she later died from breast cancer. When Elaine Douglas passed, our team, the Oklahoma UFO Paranormal Team, was asked if we wanted her research files. We, of course, said yes. It was within these files that we discovered a very large file on John Ford. Among them were his letters to her. John's letters all indicate to us he was not mentally ill in any way. We chose not to publish some things in the file for personal reasons. They were not meant for the public to read. The majority of the files are on www.elainedouglasfiles.com. If you have any questions regarding these letters, please contact us. And I give them our number, our email address, and our mailing address. Sincerely, Marilyn and Richard Carlson. So that's the letter that went with those. I hope it's explanatory.
Well done, Marilyn. Well done.
That
really good job.
So if he takes the time to sit and read them, he's going to be able to formulate a pretty good opinion, including if he spends his time reading John's 82-page public statement that he made it's practically a book regarding what happened to him and how he got himself into that situation. So anyway, that's the latest news, is that he does have a new attorney, and I'm really happy that he's switched attorneys. His other attorney, as many of you who've been listening to the show may know, became very ill with cancer, and he basically didn't have anybody in the office pick up the ball and run with it. So John had to give up on him and move on to another attorney. So
how did he come to pick this particular guy?
Joe, didn't you help?
Yeah, it was through Marty Tankleff. The gentleman who was arrested when he was. Am I coming through? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Marty Tankleff is he's a celebrity in the New York area. He was arrested at the age of 17 and convicted of a very serious crime, imprisoned for 17 years. And only after 17 years, he finally he had to prove his innocence, basically. It was a similar situation, except he was found guilty after trial, and John never had a trial. John Ford was completely denied access to the court system and so forth. But this guy, Tankleff, became basically a local celebrity. He went to law school, and now he scours around, and if he has an interest in a case, he picks attorneys to do whatever their specialty is, whether it be litigation, civil rights. It's mostly civil rights, or the lack thereof through the justice system and the court system cases. And he basically instructed Mr. Metcalf to contact John and to contact me and make arrangements so that they could take the case. They're very interested in the case now. And it's been after so long. I mean, we're talking 21 and a half years in custody illegally. And I spoke with him at some length, and I sent him every possible website link, every video, links to videos that are up there concerning the district attorney and so forth. And it was only after this past Tuesday, John had his mental health evaluation for the staff at the North Hudson facility there. They had 5 psychiatrists and the entire treatment team go in there and give testimony concerning John. And John was allowed in there with his present lawyer, which is Mr. Reno, Robert Reno. Okay. So it was after that John, it was over the weekend prior to that, John gave me the final say-so that it was okay to send this guy a check for more than he makes in a year for his disability income from the state of New York, which he wouldn't have access to if he had pled guilty to a felony, even a low level felony, and he would not have been able to have any access to an attorney of the stature, considering his level of expertise, John's getting a bargain. Okay. And but I had to wait for final agreement, with John. Are you absolutely sure? Is he going to cover everything? Have you spoken with the guy? Spoke with him several times, and I believe he's going up to visit him sometime this week. I'm not certain of that. I spoke with John earlier this evening, and he seems very optimistic about it, even though according to Reno, the last event on this past Tuesday, the meeting with the psychiatrist and the lawyers and the district attorney's office, Reno told him that he thought something wasn't right, that they were trying to set him up for something, but he did very well in his participation in that venue. So we have the guy. As soon as he cashes the check, I guess he's going to go up and see John and get any other information he needs. So that's where that stands right now. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
I was curious. I had initially been under the impression that Marty Tankleff was going to take over himself. Is there some reason why he recommended Steve Metcalf?
Yes, there is. Marty Tankleff is not. He's not able to take certain cases by himself because of his level of expertise, with the bar and so forth. He hasn't crossed. You have to remember, he only started going to school and then to law school when he was 34. Okay,
right.
And I believe now he's 37 or 38. So what he does is after winning one of the suits, now he can go out and hire these lawyers and pick the cases that he wants to. So they work for him.
I gotcha. Okay.
And so, in other words, if something has litigated, he gets somebody that has a lot of courtroom experience. If something has to go to federal court, there's somebody that deals only with the federal court. If it's mental health court, they bring somebody, mental health experts in. So he picks and chooses, and he finds the best people for the job and people that aren't going to back down. And he specifically told me that several times on the phone. People that don't back down are going to be involved in this. People that want publicity regarding this case, not people that are going to shy away from it, like his previous attorneys. All right, people that want publicity, that want to be on the radio, that are going to bring it to the attention of local and network and hopefully international television, just like the alleged crime. Okay, and there was no crime. Let's make that very, very clear. There was no crime. This was a thought crime. This is something that was taken from an innocent man in his home where the expectation of privacy was paramount. Okay? Right. It was done in the dirtiest way possible. Okay? Everybody here knows what I'm talking about. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
No? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is something that we talk about even on the radio, joking around about, this guy and political opponents, people that we believe in, people that have, that are detractors to the just to the basic moral of anybody, of any living human. And these people were so far below that, and they had to find a scapegoat for their dirty deeds, and they went after John. Okay? It's just a horrible, horrible thing. It's all political, and it smells. And after over 21 years now, it's just gotten to the point of stupidity. John just turned, I believe, 70 this past later.
Right.
Okay.
And 29th his birthday, yeah.
28th or 29th, I don't remember. I do his tax returns, and I still get them.
28th, and I'll tell you why I know, because my birthday is the 26th.
Happy birthday, Marilyn. Happy belated birthday.
Thanks.
So I'll let somebody else speak or ask questions. I think that's about the update, the upshot of everything. That's where we are now.
Joe, I understand it's your birthday. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, it is.
I just saw it on Facebook, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you very
birthday.
much.
Yes.
Officially, it's the 11th, and I have a younger sister born on August 6th, so we both have very...
and many more, Joe.
What's interesting, Joe, is the 11th was my dad's birthday.
Okay.
That's But can you imagine two of the only siblings, one on August 6th and the other one on 9/11? That's pretty strange in any family.
My dad said that he was the first semester of 9/11.
Joe, is your birthday today or the 11th?
No, it's actually the 11th. I always put down the 10th so people don't associate me with that day.
I get it, yeah.
Unless
I do have a friend actually whose birthday is 9/11. Obviously, he was born long before 9/11 happened.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
My dad
It's
has
hard to celebrate. It's hard to celebrate when you have such an ominous birthday.
Yeah,
right.
My dad says he was the first disaster on 9/11.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, this is Peter Moon. Could I take over for a bit here?
Sure.
Go ahead.
And I want to talk about something that occurred Friday night, and how it ties into the John Ford paradigm. There was a History Channel documentary on it was about the Montauk Project on the Dark Files. Now, Jerry Samisi, you saw this, correct?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Okay, I'd like you to now so it's not, because this concerns, I've, researched the Montauk Project for 27 years. I'm the author and publisher of the book, along with Preston Nichols. And because, Jerry, you're a reporter who's been on the scene for a long, long time, I'd like to give your objective account of what you saw on Friday.
Well, as I had messaged you Saturday, one thing I was immensely bothered by it was that now I know from Peter previously mentioning that he had been interviewed for this show at length, and then so I was very eager to see. Now, number one, they didn't use his interview at all, and number two, when they talked about the Montauk books, they just said Preston Nichols, author of the Montauk books. When I know,
right, didn't mention you, Peter, at all.
No, so I was pretty outraged. It just that to me says a lot about something. At first, why would they even do that? Number one. Secondly, the fact is, if those original Montauk books, if obviously Preston gave a lot of info about it, I know. Maybe I shouldn't say I know. I'm surmising that Peter actually did the writing. That
yes.
Preston's the part. So to just say, I mean, I know if I had been the co-author of a book and I see it on a TV program and they just mention my co-author as the author, I'd be pretty pissed. And the fact is that it's really, without Peter Moon, this whole I guess it would have been a local legend, or people would talk about it locally on Long Island, but he put it out there. There would be no TV thing. I don't understand why they did that. and I mean that to me stands out among everything. I'm not saying that they had three people there. One was a reporter, one was allegedly had worked previously in the CIA, and the third guy was a guy who Gaetano, if I believe.
Giratano.
Yeah, Giratano.
Oh, he did the movie, right?
Right. And he had apparently summered in Montauk as a kid. He mentioned some incident when he was, say, less than 10 in the early 80s, where he was walking on the beach with his dad and around Camp Hero, I guess in the shoreline perimeter of Camp Hero, and they were stopped from going any further by some guy who was described as military, so you can't go past here, and it piqued his interest, and over the years he had kind of followed this, and I guess when the books came out, he followed the story, and then they interviewed somebody, if I'm correct, if the guy's last name is Minnick, is that right, Peter?
Something Minnick, like that, yeah.
Minnick, who had... There's
a lot of misdirection, yeah.
As a kid, as a teenager or a young guy, he and his friends had, clandestinely gone on the base, exploring the buildings, and did a lot of filming. And
nobody contacted me. I was in my 30s. Okay, I was out there with a crew of people, and I have hours and hours of video that it's much better than the stuff they put on that show. And they showed Preston in his worst shape possible. They got him completely off guard. They have a guy standing out there with a medal, wearing a pot on his head. What does that say?
Well, let me surmise this and get to the point.
I like Peter to give his comments since he was involved in it.
Yeah.
And also his reaction to being cut out of the show.
Yeah.
Peter, as you surmise this, would you please tie it in to John Ford for the audience so that they understand why?
Of course, I'm going to tie it in.
Okay.
And this is I'll just briefly address these because the whole point here is that this was a documentary that was pretending to be objective. I had, of course, there's all sorts of information that was supplied to them. The final conclusion was that, no, there's no plausibility that time travel happened. Well, I supplied them with a patent application for the time reactor. Certain people were misrepresented to me. And I'm happy that they promoted the book. And also what it's done is create a groundswell of support for another documentary, which might well include Joe Zappardo. This is still in development because there's a lot of interesting things happening right now vis-a-vis me with connections in Los Angeles for doing something. But that's really beside the point. Now, what's important here is that this pretends to be objective. And I told them about John Ford, too. And they wanted to do this whole show was supposed to be a pilot for a series. And they were using the Montauk Project as a vehicle. And they advertised that they're going to do Area 51, Dulce, the same old stuff we've heard of before. So it's really about putting on a TV show that will mimic the success of Ancient Aliens. So what we're getting now, when we talk about aliens, it's a show I can't stand to watch, by the way, but that's beside the point. John Ford was a UFO investigator. His case is a dark file. His case is more important than Area 51 or Dulce or even the Montauk Project because it is a civil rights issue of all human beings in the United States of America. So, and see, they're not interested in pursuing this. Now, when we go back to the History Channel, it is owned by it's the same situation as A&E, but it's owned. I think it's owned by A&E, but the ultimate corporate owners are Disney and the Hearst Corporation. So,
of course,
and it's tied to A&E. I forget the structure, and A&E was the one that basically ash-canned the John Ford investigation in the first place. So we're dealing with media that will create a narrative that is not in the best interests of anyone. It is sort of like sleight of hand, like, oh, look at all this interesting stuff, yet we're not giving you the real issue. Now, this is a legitimate cause for outrage. But then again, we can all be outraged. But the good news is that there is a groundswell of support swelling right now, but this will take time. It will not immediately relieve the John Ford case. But I just wanted to mention that this is what we're up against. I have no reason to be optimistic about this new attorney, other than he's a new attorney, and I'm thankful that we have a new attorney. So
So Marilyn, speaking of which, hey Marilyn, do you think this legal beagle would come on the show and talk to us?
All I can say is we can certainly talk to them if it's really the case that they want to be on TV and they want to talk about things. I would see no reason why they would decline doing a radio interview. So
well, better yet, Marilyn.
I would say the odds in 90% are greater, because this guy sounded like he wanted to get everything out there, and that he was looking for media attention. When I spoke with him twice.
Cases are won in the media, and you see that guy who used to be the Southern Poverty. I don't know that he was the white guy that was always fighting civil rights causes in the South. He's always
the white guy.
Yeah, he's a very prominent attorney. He's a very
I know who you're talking. I can't think of his name, but I know who you're talking about. Go ahead.
He's always on, pounding the pavement to make his cases known. And it's in this Gloria Allred, who does sex abuse. She's always in the media. She's a media magnet, and she never tries cases. I heard she's never tried a case. She always gets settlements because she's a media magnet, and that's what she does.
Well, it's about damn time that somebody gets out there.
It's still, even if you say they didn't want to get to the depth of the situation, I don't even understand the purpose in cutting you out of that show and not even accrediting you with the books. I don't even understand.
Well, I will tell you why, Jerry. I will tell you why. Because I actually offered them evidence of time travel. And you can see it on my website, timetraveleducationcenter.com. This is actual science based upon somebody who has actually created a time reactor with a patent application. It stands up to scientific scrutiny. And if they wanted to discredit it and discredit me, they would have gotten some hack scientist up there and said, well, this doesn't exist. They didn't want to do that.
And I think 2 German scientists here, like in the last 2 years, produced a mathematical formula that time travel is possible. Requires an enormous amount of energy, but it is possible.
No, Ken, just so you know, this whole energy thing is solved. They're a little behind they're a little far off. Yes, you can go onto my website, timetraveleducationcenter.com, and you will see the math and physics. A junior high school can understand it. Junior high school student can understand it on the math and physics that shows that time travel does not violate the laws of physics or math. And further, there is
except for the Wheeler boundary, but we can get into that another time.
It's a done deal. It's a done deal, and it's not confusing at all. It's just the access to the technology and the technology itself. So what I'm saying is I provided this for them, and they did not even choose to dispute
acknowledge.
They did take the diagrams of Preston in the book that he provided for me and were rendered by my ex-wife, and said that they were not engineering diagrams, although I've known engineers, master engineers, that would disagree with their comments. They also
they're block diagrams. They're not schematics. They're not schematic diagrams.
Yeah, it's a block diagram.
That's what they said. They're block diagrams, and they should have specified that they were supplied with block diagrams, not with schematic diagrams. I mean, any engineer knows the difference. Anybody knows the difference.
Yes,
right?
So they were doing that. They also disputed Preston's degree from the University of Tampa. And, of course, Preston had told me that the way he got his degree was he had studied at Brooklyn Polytech, and he was pulled into projects. He was brilliant. His he was not hired because of his degree. He was hired because of his brilliance in technicalese. So anyway, after he went to Tampa, where they had a program where he could go there, spend a week or two and take tests, and they would validate his knowledge and they would give him a diploma. It was an accredited university, but it wasn't a place that he attended as a regular student.
And
so
non-matriculated courses.
What Gaetano did was they said, "Oh well, we contacted the Tampa University, and they have no record of Preston Nichols, and yet Preston did go there and did take the test and pass it." Probably
that was not Gaetano who said that. That was the
CIA guy.
Well, that wasn't the. He was introduced to me as somebody who'd been in the CIA, but he was the reporter, the skeptical reporter. But in any case, it's like they're framing him. And if you go to Wikipedia and look at social framing and this sort of thing, it's like, you try and show somebody. Now, Preston Nichols is somebody who is a genius. At the same time, he manifests signs of dysfunction and, even insanity. But they're simultaneous.
There's that fine line between being a genius and stepping over that fine line into insanity, and Preston teeters on that line.
Yes, but there is a value. And by the way, Preston Nichols, I saw him last week for the first time in 2 years, and he's on a walker and whatnot, but he was very coherent. He was, he's doing better than he has in some time.
How does this tie in then with the John Ford case? Can you fill us in with that?
I said that we're dealing with the media and the media's refusal to deal with it. And it's like and the media is controlled by powers behind the media that also control the powers behind the institute that he's in and the court system that he's in. They're all tied together. And if you go to the same clubs, you might just find all of these people being tortured by the same dominatrix. And I'm not joking.
Preston and John were friends, were they not?
John and Preston were friends, and Preston was a member he was the scientific consultant for the Long Island UFO Network.
Yeah, okay.
And he was the one that first notified me of John's incarceration, and I asked him about the search warrant. He went and got it from the refrigerator, the whole search warrant case. So Preston was a part of the initial, and I used to visit John in the jail with Preston, and one time they wouldn't let Preston in, and he was outraged. They let me in, but they wouldn't let Preston in. And, so Preston was deeply involved with John Ford.
Yeah.
As a friend and
Preston provided me with the audio tapes from the police, which I listened to, which were on video, and he put them on video for a specific reason, because every 30th or every 60th of a second, the speed is updated. So the speed from the cassette tape to the videotape is identical, and everything should be perfect. And unfortunately, the time codes don't match up. And that allowed me, if it wasn't for Preston putting that on videotape instead of on the audio track of the videotape, as opposed to putting it on an audio tape and having it degrade and stuff over time, I would not have been able to ascertain to the limits of error, to within any limits of error that the audio had been changed. Okay, so he did really have it. He had his stuff together back when John was arrested. He provided me with the audio evidence, and I think what they did to him was a hatchet job. They took him at his worst, and then they had somebody outside alleging that he was a Preston Nichols disciple wearing a pot on his head. I mean, come on. They're making the guy look nuts. They take a couple of things of his statements out of context. Okay? A couple of his statements.
We understand this, Joe. But what you're saying,
awful.
back to the John Ford.
It was a hatchet job.
Yes, but Joe, back to the John Ford case. With reference to this radio and video of the radio signals, this is very good evidence that could be used to vindicate John. The problem is we don't have a forum to vindicate John. And the forum, like say they create a forum with this TV show, but in the court they create their own forum and they frame things so that, there's been no opportunity to vindicate John with this evidence that you have and with an expert such as yourself to explain the evidence to a jury or a judge. And because the issue is not about whether John was framed by the police, the issue is whether John is sane or not. And this is the problem. And this is
right.
And
right,
so
exactly. And now they have 5 psychiatrists, 3 for the district attorney's office, 2 from the hospital, and his treatment team taking interviews from John with his attorney present, but still, the treatment team was interviewed separately, and John was not allowed to have copies or anything to do with that. He wasn't allowed to listen. His lawyer wasn't allowed to go in there. So what the treatment team said to the psychiatrist and what John said to the psychiatrist are 2 separate things. Okay, and John was only allowed to have his attorney present and know what he said and what was asked of him. Okay, so he hasn't gotten a yay or a nay of whether he's going to be going home or not, but it doesn't look like it. Okay,
well, this whole issue we brought it up before of patients' rights, mental patients' rights, and it's like
very limited. All right. We've taken every tack that you suggested, or at least I've made inquiries about every tack that you suggested, Peter, and this guy does not want to budge. It seems that the new guy does. He's not just interested in that; he's interested in getting the entire story out, which includes the phony search warrant, the phony audio. Everything.
Are you speaking of the attorney or the psychiatrist? You're speaking of the attorney.
The new attorney. Okay? The original attorney wanted to play completely within the bounds of mental health law in New York State. Okay? This guy wants to go out. If he has to go to federal court, he will. All right? If he has to appeal it to a different level, a different venue to get into a civil rights type of situation, he'll do it. Okay, and
let me tell you something. And this is that. See, what really is good if a lawyer has the power. Like if you go to a high law firm, they have power and clout that a lower law firm doesn't, and that means they have associates in the media. And this is what we need now. Right now, I am working with the whole sort of issue that Jerry had mentioned about myself. I'm dealing with a member who's been involved in many secret societies and the defense industry, and he's outraged personally at the way I've been ignored by the media and my work, not me so much, but the work that I've done. So in other words, he has certain clout in terms of technology, in terms of, and we're going to try and do a big end around on everything. And it's all has to do with movie technology. But by the same token, if this attorney, it's like we need power brokers. And I guess from my own personal issue, the times are changing. The Freemasons and these people have their own clockwork. And sometimes they will acknowledge and let loose truths. I heard this many years ago that they were releasing all of this truth and information. I never got to meet per se, but in other words, they're not all bad. They certainly get in the way of things, but they basically control all of these things. So it's like sometimes the worm turns, and if the lawyer has contacts in the media and influence, it's like we need the squirt gun to be fired and shed some water or light on the situation. And this is and it's just because to put it in the framework of like Robert Reno wanted to do, he was trying to work in with a system, and it sort of made sense, but it didn't work. And that's the problem, because the system is rigged. As Donald Trump would say, the system is rigged, and it is a rigged system. And this is the problem.
Yeah, it's not justice. It's not justice. I mean, the man was never, he was indicted, but you can indict a loaf of bread, right? you can. Somebody said you can indict a ham a long time ago, right? You can indict a pig. You can, an indictment is not a conviction, all right? And the fact that John feared, he had a legitimate reason for allowing his attorney, his then attorney, in 1996, 1997, who was tied in politically, for claiming that he was psychiatrically impaired because he was protecting his pension, okay, his New York State pension. He worked for over 20 years carrying a gun for the New York State State Supreme Court without incident. And how is he a problem? How is he an issue? How is he dangerous at the age of 70 now? Okay?
Well, that's been my question all along. You got 20. You have 20 years of a man carrying a firearm in the judicial system in the state of New York, and
right.
there's no indication that he had any mental problems. Okay,
right.
and I think, hey, Marilyn, those letters from Elaine Douglas, I think, is very, very powerful.
Not many people have read them, but Ken has read them, and he is in full agreement with Dick and I that those letters indicate that John is not a nutcase. Yeah,
right.
There's probably
And I'll be honest, that's what pissed me off with this other legal big oak, because he came on the show and that we told him about that.
Yes,
that he could go to the Elaine Douglas website and see stuff and give you an idea of John's frame of mind.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
He didn't know
I think the only time
case even.
And I can't believe that wasn't even given to his psychiatrist. Say, hey, doc, okay, read these letters and tell me that this man is or is not sane.
Well, the letters did not become known, and I don't know why Elaine saved them, but she did. But Elaine, she knows enough about the law because that was part of her business, how she made a living was working with attorneys to promote themselves and to get their business up and running after law school graduation. And she should have been able to come forward with those letters. Maybe she tried, I don't know, but we did not know about those letters until we inherited her all of her research files that she had done over the years with not just John Ford, but many other UFO cases.
Elaine Douglas was one of the first people that contacted me after John was committed and asked that if she could use my name, address, and telephone number on it was basically just a text website. The original website for John Ford was run by Elaine Douglas. Mm-hmm. It was Restore John Ford or something to that effect, and it was me and maybe three other people. I think maximum on there. 1998, 1997, when John was first put up there, and it was just a long narrative, and I signed it with my name and phone number. At that time. The area code here was 516. It's now 631. I have the same phone number, but I had my name, address, and phone number up there, and I was in communication with her as well. And it was very well written. I believe she worked for CNN at one time in the early 90s.
In Washington.
And and when she was in D.C., I was speaking with her when she was in D.C. and she was over here visiting. And she called me to ask me if she could use my name. And I said, absolutely. After I read it over, I called her back. I said, yeah, absolutely. Put my name right on there. No problem. No problem at all. I'll take questions from anyone.
In Elaine's files, she had a whole big list of people's names. The John Ford Defense group that she had their names, addresses, and phone numbers, email addresses, and so forth for contact. And this is how I found Joe Zappardo. His name was on that list, and I went down the list calling names. Some people returned my call.
We didn't know John was even alive.
Yeah, we didn't even know if John was even alive when we found those papers. We'd heard about him, but he was lost in the shuffle, and so we didn't know what happened to him. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try and find out. So I called every name that Elaine had on that list, and Joe Zapardos was there. Preston Nichols.
I was amazed because nobody called me up asking for about John Ford, and I tried to get coverage for John Ford. I went out and actively tried to get him some kind of coverage. Nobody was interested. Absolutely nobody. And all of a sudden, first you called, then Rick called, then I think Peter called around in the same year, or the following year, and then we got this radio show going. Yeah. And I was amazed. I was amazed that people finally, after so many years, maybe they talked to John. I didn't know what the deal was. I said, if it's going to be good for John Ford, if you look into it and you treat it fairly, whatever you do is fine with me. That was my response. Am I correct?
Yes.
Marilyn? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. And so, we just picked up the ball and ran with it, and thank God, Inception Radio decided that they would do a radio show, and we, it's been a blessing for John and Joe and Dick and I and that you guys too for all of you for doing this. And I have to say this. You might call me a nutcase because it was out of the blue that I get this phone call from Elaine's, from the fellow that was given the task of taking care of her estate. And he asked us if we wanted her files, and I could not believe it because I'd never heard of the man before or anything. And I get this phone call, and right from the beginning, I felt as if Elaine was up there somewhere saying, "You call Marilyn, she'll take care of it. I know, because she's a bulldog."
Well, we did right after she passed away. We said, "I wonder where her files are going."
Yeah, and
just amongst Marilyn and I.
Yeah, and then right after that, I get a phone call, and it was like, "Man, I must have been in tune with that one." And
hey, she's still in there pitching for John Ford, man. Her letters.
She has to be.
Yeah. Hey, whatever you want to call it, but there's still a force there at work. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything is evident. And Peter, I think your name was on that list as well, if I remember correctly.
I knew Elaine, and we didn't dialogue a whole lot, but I did know her.
Yeah. So I knew her when she was very, very sick, and
I knew her when she was very, very crusty.
Oh, she could get in your face, I'll tell you.
Oh man, I gotta. Hey, you know a little bit about my personality. So there were a couple of times that Elaine and I were nose to nose. I mean, in a professional, friendly,
yes,
kinda, sort of way.
Dick had a similar situation with her.
Yeah, and the bad part about it was she was riding with us, and we were about 100 miles from Oklahoma City, and I says, "Well, maybe you're going to have to take a cab back."
Oh God!
She pissed me off so much, but in the end, we hugged.
Hey, she was a good researcher, though. She.
Oh yes.
She was a digger.
It was evident in all of her files. So
what's that, Marilyn?
It was evident in all of her files.
Right. Anybody that's listening, go to that website. You'll see what we're talking about.
ElaineDouglasFiles.com. And Douglas is
by the way, it was one of the sites that I sent the attorney to in my initial conversation by email to him, and he promised to visit not just that, but also Rick's site, the fundraising site with all the audio and stuff on it, and the links to the video I have up on YouTube with the 10-15 minute segments of different, mostly News 12, which is on Long Island, Suffolk County mostly, where that was the lead story every hour up until Flight 800 was taken out of the sky. That was the lead story. You know, this guy's crazy. He's going to put uranium in toothpaste, and he's got all these co-conspirators.
Right.
And there's no they couldn't find another co-conspirator. They had to drop the charges against Szabo. It was the word of one man who doesn't really have much of a word, Joe Mazzucchelli. Okay, and no one else was.
But that was for stolen the gun, a stolen
car.
Yeah,
he stole a gun, maybe more than one gun, and you know the numbers come back to John. Hey, he's a perfect scapegoat. Okay, he's a perfect scapegoat for what they're doing. Takes the attention off of the crooked politicians, and it makes them the target of something horrible.
And the illegal dumping that was going on.
Not just the illegal dumping, the chop shops, drug deals, sand mining. There's tons of stuff that they were doing that they got away with right up until the time they were either put in prison, died, or I mean, look at
and you know, once John entered the hopper into that system, that legal system, it's self-perpetuating. I mean, based upon what little I know, I mean, they evaluate him and they pass judgment on him. He doesn't have a fair representation of his case.
No, all they have to do is get a psychiatrist to say, no, he can't get out. You know, he's still
prove that he's sane. That's ridiculous. Why should you have to prove that you're sane? Okay, he doesn't believe in anything that we don't all believe in. Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in, you know, he believes in what evidence is shown to him, okay? If he's shown, you know, evidence that goes one way, it leads one way on purpose, okay, you know, and they're trying to steer him one way, but he's not the type of guy to act on that, to everybody
well,
knows
I noticed they...
Okay, but he's not you know, violent. Okay, never has been, never will be, in my opinion.
If you ever talk to John, you would hear, when you hear his voice, he's a very soft-spoken man, and he's not easily excitable. And I could, you know, because I asked him some really blunt, point-blank questions when I first talked to him on the phone, and he was as calm and as cool as could be, and answered them with intelligence. So, I believe we even posted at one point in time on Inception Radio. We were able to record it with his permission. He was not on the show itself, but I recorded it when I talked to him, and you can hear me talking to him, and you can hear his voice, and I think that's up on the website. So you'll get a voice on there.
Marilyn, this has never been a case of his innocence. This is more to do with just shutting him down, waiting for him to die out, because they can't let him out. Just like Ken said, he's in the legal hopper right now, and if they ever do let him out, which I'm sorry to say, won't happen, the lawsuits will be in the billions of dollars against the state.
Easily. 21 years of your life. I mean,
so what the legal motivation here? The legal motivation on a crooked legal system is to keep him in until he dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's ridiculous.
That's why I don't see the Montauk Project. You know, I don't see that as like, you don't see a lot of people coming out of the woodwork and saying, "Hey, I was brought here and I was brought down there, and this is what happened. This is the result, and here are the medical records and everything out in the open." You know, I can kind of understand them wanting to put the kibosh on that before anybody decides to start suing the Air Force or whoever was running it at the time. But I don't understand what they still have against John, other than that they're keeping him in there and they're continuing to say he's crazy because they don't want him to have a footing to come out and sue them.
Yes,
and
that's what
simple as that.
That's what I was thinking.
It's toward action. It's toward action mitigation. That's all it is.
And if anyone's followed what's going on with the oh gosh, what's the name of the county? I'm drawing a blank.
Suffolk.
County, the Suffolk County. In the last few years, they have been screaming for money. They have no money. They're broke, and New York State has had to bail them out a few times. And so, if they got sued for in the billions, and that's exactly what it would be, is in the billions, Suffolk County would, be owned by the attorneys and John Ford.
Well, it never works that way, though. They what they do is they contain it, and judges will become very circumspect to the point where they become prejudicial in judging such cases in the past, where people have legitimate cases that are not of this magnitude, and they will railroad the litigant right out of getting any sort of settlement. They'll even have policemen want to come in and lie.
Sure.
And there was one person who exposed a policeman lying on the stand, and he was railroaded out of the court even after doing that. Wow. Because, in other words, if it's like you're basically declaring the system guilty, and the system will not allow itself to be declared guilty. So for John to sue them, he's never going to be successful doing that, even though he has a legitimate complaint. That's not how the system works. It will.
I don't know. This guy, look what happened with the guy after 17 years. All right. They found whoever committed the crime. He was found not guilty. After 17 years,
what did he receive?
He found guilty in a jury trial by 12 jurors. He was found guilty at the age of 17. He's out at the age of 34, and now he's picking and choosing the attorneys, the same attorneys that are going to be working on John's case from here forward. Okay, so I have a good feeling.
He hasn't won yet. Okay, I hope
I'm sorry?
I hope he does win. It's also typical for a county or some entity to have insurance that will then cover for them.
Well, I pity the insurance company then.
Having been involved in federal litigation at a civil level, I can assure you that even if it was billions, it'll go into arbitration, and a judge will go, hey, you know what? There's no way that Suffolk County can pay it, but they can pay $60 million. Here's what you're going to get. Bing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's possible.
And so, and I want to remind our listeners, and somebody touched on it earlier in the show, and that is, this is a constitutional issue that we're dealing with here. There are ramifications that affect each and every one of us, and we should remember that the system's not perfect, and having worked in it for 31 years, I can testify to that too, but it is the only system, I think, that at least you've got a shot at it. And yes, there is corruption, there is dishonesty, but when it's brought to light, I think the people, and that's you and I and everybody else, have a right to demand that, justice for all. That's the reason why she's blindfolded, okay? It's what the evidence says.
Yeah.
Yes, and an attorney recently said to me that the justice system provides you an opportunity for justice. It does not guarantee you justice.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. And there is no guarantees. That's a fact. Okay, but it is one of the best systems, I think, that anybody on the planet has. I would rather be involved in a situation like John Ford in this country than, let's say, Pakistan or India. Or
it's less corrupt, although it's very corrupt. It's less corrupt.
At least we have the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that's basically what it all boils down to with John Ford. I mean, from the moment that they decided that they were going to arrest him, there was a number of missteps that any lawyer, and that's what I don't understand at the very get-go. I'm still kind of confused about that, because I think even though he was arrested, the warrant, the date, everything. There was all kinds of, the evidence that they used to get the warrant. I mean, I got some serious problems with that.
His attorney convinced him, did not take up those issues. He agreed with the court, and he was basically railroading him because he was in cahoots with the John Ford's adversary, John Powell. They were in cahoots.
Wait, I just want to respond to that. When at the time, this is Jerry, I brought that up to his attorney about the warrant being dated 2 days after his arrest. The attorney said he didn't feel that's going to be a viable avenue to pursue, because what's just going to happen is the prosecution is going to say it's a typographical error. They're going to get a detective to swear before the judge, I ordered this warrant at this time, and that's going to be it. So, I mean, I agree with you. I thought the whole case could be thrown out on that, because it was Preston who showed me a copy of that. I remember that very vividly. But and as you point out, that sits heavily with you, and it always has with me. And his attorney just said, they're just going to get people to swear that it was done on X date on the 12th, and they made a typo and wrote the 14th.
Oh, where did they get a judge? Where did they get a judge at 8:20 on a Tuesday night? Really.
Well,
right?
I would assume, I'm using it maybe ironically or sarcastically, that they got this warrant at 4:00 in the afternoon or whatever that day. So I don't know.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been able to get the warrant based on the information. They had to have those last two recordings, and I believe that they used those in front of the judge.
And that's why I say that's sarcastic, because that's it. And what gets me is he went through. I forget the original attorney. I can't think of her name now.
John Rouse.
No. Oh yeah. Well, after Rouse. I mean, but after he was locked up. And then he had, I can't think of her, it was a woman.
Andrea Rizzoli?
Rizzoli, something like that. And then that nobody, this to me is like just unravels the whole case. And apparently no one has put their hands on it to do so.
Nobody wants to go there, especially, they want to confine it to mental health court, and that's that. And that's what he's been dealing with. There is no justice there when you have to prove that you're not insane, that you're not making this up, that you did plan to do something. It says that you made these statements, and now you're denying them, and they're nowhere. They're not recorded anywhere other than on a district attorney's, allegedly an assistant district attorney's, recording machine through a third person, through John Mazzucchelli. Okay, had nothing to do with anything John said. Obviously, he was never recorded prior to the evening of his arrest. You understand? They have no recordings of John. Joe Mazzucchelli exclusively used a cell phone, and all of the entire evidence leading up to the warrant to record in his home was based on things Joe Mazzucchelli told either his friend or the guy that was working for the district attorney's office. It's not fair to John, and it never went through any type of legal channels, and it hasn't been going through legal channels for 21 and a half years.
I think it's a pathetic indictment of our legal system, whether it's this country or any country, that we've gone through. How many lawyers? How many lawyers have we gone through? But I'm glad to hear that the current lawyer, the current lawyer is not afraid to be both popular and vilified at the same time, and is willing to get his hands dirty by getting in front of the media and playing dirty ball and giving them a taste of their own medicine. I would like to get a hold of this Stephen Metcalf and organize a social media marketing campaign in conjunction with what he's doing. This is what I've been waiting for, but the last three lawyers have been a goddamn bunch of pussies, and nobody wanted to do a damn thing.
I think that's a great idea, Richard.
So, I mean, nobody's going to do it better than me. You guys all know that. So,
Yeah.
I would like to work with his lawyer and find out
I'm going to give you his phone number.
Find out what his game plan is and get on board with it, and synchronize, everything with that. Because the last thing I want to do is do something that conflicts with his ideas. So, this is awesome. I mean, because you guys were talking about Elaine before. She was my original inspiration for taking the whole UFO arena down the path of politics and economics and getting rid of all of the ooga booga hocus pocus bullshit that everybody else clings to. Like Peter Moon was saying, that crap on ancient aliens. Yeah, it's just they go for the ooga booga hocus pocus crap and they never get into the economics or the politics. And Elaine Douglas was the first person to do that. And for me, it's a powerful synchronicity to basically pick up where she left off back in the 90s with the Defense Committee for John Ford. That was my inspiration there for the John Ford Initiative. I remember that. I remember what she did, and I remember seeing her at a conference that John Ford had put together. Talk about synchronicity and people connected here. A conference or symposium that John Ford had put together, and guess who one of the speakers were? Elaine Douglas. And she was the only speaker that stood out to me. I watched her lecture, and I was in awe because this was the first time I saw somebody take the discussion of UFOs down an avenue that nobody else had been doing at that point, which goes a long way to explaining why, that Masonic lodge of bastards over there at MUFON ostracized her, raped her, molested her, and booted her out. So,
Exactly right.
Hey, Rick,
right along with her.
How do you
Rick,
really feel?
I want to, Rick. I want to take the stage for a second. The first time I met Elaine was at a MUFON conference. I was shoulder to shoulder with a lot of the MUFON higher echelon. The first time I met Elaine, they pointed her out as there's the enemy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know who she was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah. We all pooled our money together so Elaine could go to that conference, by the way.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. And I would have been the one shaking hands with her if I could have, but she had been so busy talking to people at that symposium, I never got to meet her face to face.
Yeah, she was elected amongst all of us that were fighting MUFON and were trying to reform MUFON. We decided she was the one that could do it best, and so we pulled our funds together and sent her to that conference. So.
Oh, good. Yeah.
What was the disagreement why did MUFON look down upon it or askance it?
Because Elaine kept pushing the John Ford issue inside MUFON.
That was a part of it is she wanted MUFON to reform, period, that MUFON had to change their rules and regulations.
She wanted an elected board.
Yes, she did want an elected board. And
because MUFON acted like such an imbecile towards John Ford when it came to MUFON not releasing records, personal records that he promised people, these are private, they're not going to get released. And MUFON came along with an attitude of like, well, we want to see what you have. And John's like, no, you have to get release forms from these people. I haven't even had a chance to do that, and MUFON had this attitude of like, well, okay, screw you. And John's attitude was, well, screw you. So, that's where that whole conversation went. So, and that that was back in the 90s.
Man of integrity.
Yeah, and so the upper echelon of male-dominated jackasses in MUFON decided to close ranks against a woman, of all things, who decided to speak out on the black sheep, the pariah, John Ford, and you can see how all this would have escalated against Elaine. Okay.
Yeah.
The women.
Yeah, then they went after a whole bunch of women that were real strong-willed, like Elaine was, and
Exactly.
that's what happened to me.
Because I can see, the female principal has a much more direct approach on things. They want MUFON to reform and be more honest. And that's not going to happen with a male-dominated Masonic lodge that has a different agenda.
Yes, it's correct.
So,
It's also crawling with CIA.
Hey, and I can address that because Judy Orsatti, through me, got on the board. She was the only female on that board, and this was a ball buster of a woman. She had her own company. Oh, let me tell you, she was. They found out probably after the second meeting, and they made. She had a lot of connections with the local TVs because she advertised on those stations. She had her own business, and a very successful one at that. And so she was able to buy her way onto the board, and her position was the PR officer, if you will, for MUFON. It was her job. And she made a statement at a dinner that her goal was to make MUFON a household word. And and so that was her position, and she grabbed the bull by the horns. And a lot of people don't know this. In fact, Elaine Douglas, I told her to talk to Judy Orsatti, but unfortunately, Judy Orsatti was killed in a motorcycle accident on Highway 34 outside of Golden, Colorado. And the conversation never took place. But Judy Orsatti was basically in control of the board. The men on the board, and we had several conversations about this, and she says, what do you think? She goes, Ken, I can sense a lot of animosity. They resent that I have a voice and a vote on the board.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that comes from listening to, and I worked directly under John Schuessler out of the Littleton headquarters office.
I remember his name. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he was the international director, and he assigned me cases that I went out, and I mean really good ones. And him and Judy Orsatti got to know each other really well, and he liked her, and she liked him. The problem was that the impression, and this is what I told Judy, it was kind of like the good old boys. These were the canoe club members, and they resented having an outsider, especially a female, that was aggressive, knew how to conduct business, had a very, very successful business, and had all these media connections. They needed her, but they didn't want her.
Right.
Yeah. I can see that being the case there. So, and then, the years go by, and it's like, what was it? I think it was 2012 that I got the phone call out of the blue from somebody. His name escapes me now. Let me see. I have it on the website here. I'll find him eventually. But he was good friends with John Ford. George Dixon, yeah.
George Dixon,
yeah. Long-time UFO researcher. He had, I remember Peter Moon was working with him, and they were trying to keep things going for John Ford as best as they could. George Dixon calls me out of the blue and explains the whole situation to me and asked me if I would basically take it over from there. Fortunately, a few months later, George Dixon passes away, and it seems, from what people have told me, that he was existing on 10 years of overtime. He should have died 10 years before, and I think it was the John Ford issue that was keeping him going the whole time. But I, at that point, had gone back and researched the original John Ford Defense Committee to being out of the loop for that many years, I was like, what happened to all those people involved with that? And I started trying to hunt down Elaine Douglas. And, the sad truth is that by the time I connected with Marilyn Carlson, I found out that I think it was like she had passed away 6 months before.
That's
or something to that. Yeah.
Yeah, you found me on Facebook, and I was. I started the the Elaine Douglas Files. That's what I put on Facebook. I set up a Elaine Douglas Files Facebook page, and posted some things on John Ford, and Rick saw them, and that's how we got in touch. So.
Yeah. And I was happy for that, and at the same time, I was like, "Oh no!" I was like, it just that feeling of like
can't possibly be still in there, right?
I was 6 months too late.
Yeah, well, it really was, and because she could have. There's many a time I'm thinking, God, I could get an answer to this question I have if Elaine was just still here, and so when she passed. A lot of information went that a lot of people, and unfortunately, most people who are involved with UFO, although this is changing, people who are involved with UFO groups are all members of MUFON. And we started our own separate group and stole Ken from MUFON and got him on our team.
Hey, I'm still an investigator for him.
Yeah, but they call you, Ken?
No, they haven't assigned me a case, I think, in about 9 months now.
Yeah.
Wow, 9 months. Holy cow.
Oh, it's in the sky?
Yeah.
yeah, buddy. But yeah.
But I would have gladly joined forces with Elaine Douglas if she had still been alive.
Yeah.
If that was at all possible. So.
What I can't figure is why John didn't follow her advice, because she had influence over.
Some really good advice on legal as a legal counsel kind of thing, and he didn't follow through on some of that,
which she wasn't happy about.
Yes,
right.
and she jumped him up one side, down the other on it, and they had a bit of a tiff on phone conversation. And later, John wrote her a letter back, and it's in the letter, said he apologized for getting mad at her. But,
What year was that? Do you remember, Marilyn?
Oh, Lord.
About what year?
I would say it was probably about 2008, maybe.
2008.
Yeah.
Was that around the time A&E started taking an interest in that, and they sent the first non-Long Island attorney out?
The guy named Stuart Sweezy. She had all that information on Stuart Sweezy from A&E. Does that name ring to you?
Yeah. Stuart Sweezy had a production company. He was going to sell a show to A&E based on John Ford, and as soon as they found out, as soon as the Hearst people found out that John was in the loony bin, that was it. That just killed it. It killed the entire thing.
Yeah.
So, but they had been paying for an attorney, and it's amazing. She's a professor at Thoreau Law College, and and for years she went along with this mental health court thing, And it's got to be in some type of, it has to be in something where he's actually going to get justice, in federal court, in civil rights law, something like that. And I think these guys see it. I think they get it finally. It took them long enough, but finally, I think this guy, Steve Metcalf, you should definitely be in touch with him, Richard and Peter. Want information? Definitely be in touch.
Can we have Metcalf's phone number?
Yeah. I'd really rather not broadcast it because I'm not sure if this is the number he uses generally. So let me give it to Richard. You guys after the show. Is that okay?
Yeah,
definitely.
Instead of broadcasting, so I don't know he usually calls me from a cell phone. I have that number. Okay, and I'm not sure if he wants that distributed publicly. Okay,
probably does.
I just hate to do that to people. I always ask them first. So.
Sure.
All right,
definitely.
But I will give it to you,
move.
Richard, because you're in it, and I mean, like I even had to check with John twice before I sent the check out. So about even retaining the guy, I want to make sure, John, you absolutely 100% sure you're gonna get what you expect. He's gonna do what you want in a suitable time frame. And he said, absolutely. Okay. That was the point at which I sent the check after I spoke to John the second time.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm trying to look out for the guy too, I mean, I'm his power of attorney, but I do what he says. I always make sure I ask him first. If I'm going to say something about him, I have his permission to say it. All right. So, and that anybody that's interviewed me, privately before we were doing this show, Rick, that, and so does Peter, I believe, right? That I had to clear it with John first, right?
Right.
Because I have nothing to sell and I have nothing to gain from this. So, I'm the honest broker here. If I go into court, I have no reason to lie.
Hey guys, I got a number for Metcalf. It's on the website. It's area code 6.
Did he not want to put that in?
It's on the website.
Is it?
Yeah, he's got a phone number for Metcalf PC on the website.
I put that one up, and if you use that in the meantime, if you can't get through to him on there, I can get the cell phone number for you. All right?
It's area code 646-253-0514.
Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry, I lost my audio here. What's this phone number?
646-253-0514.
0514? Okay.
Right.
And who is this again?
Metcalf and Metcalf, attorney.
Oh.
That's the new attorney for John.
Yeah, sorry, my audio cut out for some reason for about 30 seconds. So.
I wonder why.
You never know what's happening with this.
Yeah.
You have a very suspicious mind, Marilyn.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, and I bet you believe in flying saucers too, just like John Ford.
I do too.
Those crazy UFO people, I tell you.
Not do anything illegal. They make you plead insanity.
Yep.
But yeah, they said they couldn't use UFO against him, right? But it's because he believed he was being recruited by the CIA, right? That's where his delusional.
He was an asset during his college years. He was, and a lot of people were. Okay, they used to go after these people, and they, anybody that had a right wing temperament, they would go after them, and then if they were
they never went after me.
Building being blown up, they would go. They would. Building that somebody was going to blow up an ROTC building, he would report it. That was really the extent of they
didn't go after you, Ken, because you asked too many questions.
Well, hey, and once again, I want to reiterate, this whole thing surrounding John Ford. We all have a dog in that fight. And whatever it takes to get him out, I don't care if they get him out of the psychiatric ward and then he can tell his story and go after him civilly, and all that about the warrant and everything will come out in civil court.
Mm-hmm.
All that will be brought out from the very moment that the judicial system engaged John Ford, which he was a part of for 20 years.
Right, yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. All of a sudden, all that's going to come out in civil court. And the application for the warrant, and that's where the real key is, because it's possible the judge never even listened to those tapes. I mean, I've been in front of I'm sure it's not any different in Suffolk than it was Arapahoe and Douglas and Adams County in Colorado. You made an application for an arrest search warrant, and you submitted it to the DA, and of course in this case he's crooked as a snake, so that's no problem. And he takes it to a judge. And those DAs, they have influence with those judges because they deal with them on a daily basis. And he looked at the application and goes, yeah, okay, radium and toothpaste, yeah, okay, whatever. And then over here the DA says, yeah, we've got taped conversations where he's plotting to carry out this mission. The judge may never even listen to him, okay?
Yeah, but the thing is, Joe was on there. John was never on any of those tapes.
Well, doesn't make any difference.
Why are they going after John?
Well, it doesn't make it. I'm talking about the application for the warrant. It doesn't make any difference whether he's on the tapes or not. All the DA says to the judge after showing him all this other written testimony and statements and the wires and the telephone conversations and illegal wiretap that went on and everything else. On top of that, the DA says, yeah, and I've got these 2 tapes of John Ford. And the judge goes, yeah, okay, good enough for me, and never even listened to him, knowing that John Ford was not on any of them.
Wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean,
and in a civil trial, that will all come out. It has to, because it'll go to the very crux as how John got thrown into the hopper of this judicial grist and has been ground in for 20-some years.
Covered up.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and that will all come out in a civil. That's where the real story is going to be. And the main thing is to get him out of that incarceration and get his monkey butt on the show so he can tell his side of the story, at least to some extent, and what he feels, and maybe field some questions. I think it'd be outstanding. We need to get him out of that environment. My concern, and then I'll shut up, is that I'm worried that John is institutionalized, and I've brought it up on numerous occasions.
Right,
I've seen it many times. Okay, it's kind of like the Stockholm syndrome in some respects, but you're talking about a long-term environment. You're talking about, we use the term 3 hots and a cot. I mean, think about it. His day's planned for him. He doesn't have to do anything. He knows what he's going to be doing tomorrow. He knows when he's going to get breakfast. He knows his routine is mapped out for him.
Ken, have you ever spoken with him?
No, I have not.
If you speak with John once, you'll know that that's not the case.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I can ask him to call you if you want.
I absolutely. I read the letters that we're talking about.
Hey, my phone sets up a 3-way conversation. I mean, if he calls me, I'll call Ken and get him in on the conversation.
That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, because I read the letters, and there's nothing in any of those letters that I read. Granted, I'm not a doctorate of psychiatry, but I certainly dealt with my share of mental patients. George, I know you're listening. We were down there at that mental health clinic at least twice a week handling delusional, psychotic, psychiatric, didn't take their medicine patients.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody.
Okay, and I didn't see any of that.
Kenny, we've reached
those letters. John struck me as a very sane, a very lucid. His sentences were complete. I mean, you could follow his train of thought. At least I could. So maybe I'm just as nuts as he is.
Okay, everybody. Yeah, we've reached the end of the show, everybody. That was an hour and a half.
The show, and he was extremely lucid, very rational, very calm. Yeah. No, he's just like I was talking to Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody. End of the show already. You believe that? Hour and a half went by that quick.
Oh my God.
We didn't even take a break.
I let you guys go. You guys had some good stuff. I let it go. No breaks.
It was a good show. Yeah, well done.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So next.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for showing up, and thanks to Joe for all this information about John this week, and thanks, Peter, for being on. And
sure. Thank you, everybody. It was a good show.
Barring any,
see if we can get the attorney for next show.
Yep. Barring any huge news, we'll be back October 8th, 9 p.m. Eastern, and definitely would love to get the lawyer on too. That would be a perfect time. October 8th, 9 p.m.
Joe, would you stay on, and Ken, would you stay on, or did Ken just leave?
Ken just left.
Okay.
Just bailed out. He said, since George left.
Good night,
Okay.
everybody. Thank you.
John,